So what if the most creative, the most complete human mind wasn't strictly male or female, but a fusion of both? It was a really radical idea Virginia Woolf unleashed on the world, and she explored it through one of the most fantastic, mind-bending stories in all of literature.
And let's just dive right in with Woolf's own words here. She brings up the poet Coleridge, saying, "A great mind is androgynous." Now, for her, this wasn't just some nice poetic thought. No, this was the key to unlocking our full potential, a mind that's fully fertilized, one that uses all its faculties.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll get into Woolf's big idea itself. Then we'll see it in action with her wild literary experiment, the character Orlando. We'll unpack the battle between mind, body, and society, see how it fits into a larger history of outsiders, and then wrap up with the big question this all leaves us with today. Okay, let's get into our first section, Woolf's big idea, what she called the theory of the androgynous mind. So, who was Virginia Woolf? Well, she was so much more than just a novelist. She was a giant of modernism and a true pioneer of feminist thought. She spent her life relentlessly challenging the patriarchal society she was born into, not just in essays, but in her incredibly imaginative fiction. At the very heart of this is the idea of psychological androgyny. Now, this isn't about biology. It's all about the mind. It's this state where traits our society calls masculine, like maybe boldness, and traits we call feminine, like gentleness, aren't at war with each other. Instead, they're harmoniously integrated. For Woolf, this was the ultimate goal, the most complete and creative way to be. You know, a theory is one thing, but how do you actually show it? That brings us to section 2, and Woolf's absolutely brilliant experiment, the character of Orlando, who is basically a 400-year case study in what it means to be a self. So in 1928, Woolf drops this book called Orlando, a biography. And right away, it's a bit of a joke because it's really this fantastical adventure through history. It's about a young, handsome nobleman who lives for centuries. And then, one morning, at the age of 30, he wakes up and has become a woman. I mean, what a spectacular way to put your ideas to the test, right? And Woolf puts gender and identity on the table from the very first sentence. He, for there could be no doubt of his sex, the narrator is so insistent, but then there's that little clause, though the fashion of the time did something to disguise it. It's like a little wink to the reader, basically telling us from page 1 that what you see on the surface, well, it might not be the whole story. Then, about halfway through the book, the moment of truth arrives. Orlando falls into this deep 7-day sleep and wakes up. The narrator, with all this mock seriousness and trumpets blaring, "Truth, truth, truth," declares, "We have no choice left but confess. He was a woman." And that's it, just like that. No long explanation, it's just a new biological fact. So what does a change like that actually mean? Well, that's what section 3 is all about. This epic battle for the self that plays out between the mind, the body, and society. This quote, "This is the absolute key to the entire book." Woolf is crystal clear here. Orlando's body changes, and that definitely changes their future. But their identity, their personality, their memories, their mind, that stays exactly the same. The mind is the constant, even when the body is not. Now, to really get this, we have to make a distinction Woolf was playing with long before it was common conversation, the difference between sex and gender. See, sex refers to the biological facts of your body, but gender? That's about the rules, the behaviors, and the roles that society assigns to those bodies. And this lays it out perfectly. On one side, biological sex, a physical reality of the body. On the other side, you've got socially constructed gender, a set of rules and expectations you are born into. Orlando's sex changes, sure, but it's the sudden shift in these social expectations that really flips their world upside down. So, what did these rules actually look like? Well, as a man, Orlando owned property, he could travel wherever he wanted, and his love affairs were just boys being boys. But as a woman, suddenly she's expected to be quiet, chaste, dependent on a husband, and she's literally trapped by her heavy, restrictive clothing. It's the same person, but a completely different rulebook. And for Woolf, clothing becomes this incredibly powerful symbol for all these social rules. As this quote says, "Sometimes it feels like the clothes are the only thing creating the male or female likeness. They don't just reflect your gender, they enforce it. What you wear tells society how to treat you, no matter what's going on underneath." But Orlando, having lived on both sides of the fence, learns to game the system. They start using clothes as a tool, not a prison. By changing an outfit, Orlando can crisscross between the genders and experience the world from multiple viewpoints. Society's rigid rules actually become a source of freedom, leading to a much richer, twofold life. Okay, let's zoom out now for section 4. Let's talk about a history of outsiders, because that's where we really see Orlando as a key part of Woolf's larger feminist project. You see, Woolf wasn't just writing novels, she was kind of rewriting history itself. She totally rejected that traditional great man version of history, the one that's all about kings and generals. Instead, her work, and especially Orlando, shines a light on the lives of people who were left out of those books, mostly women, who were shut out of the very institutions that got to write history in the first place.
And you can just feel the biting irony in this quote. This is what's going through Orlando's head as she's watching some pompous male poet. It's this perfect, hilarious mockery of the whole patriarchal ideal. The weak, grateful woman worshiping her big, strong male protector. Woolf uses Orlando's inner voice to show just how absurd that whole structure is.
And for Woolf, this wasn't just some academic point. This exclusion had real, damaging consequences. It connects directly to her most famous argument of all, that for a woman to create anything, to have an independent mind, she needs financial security and intellectual freedom. In her iconic phrase, she needs a room of one's own. Orlando's centuries-long legal battle just to keep her own property after becoming a woman, it's a fictional version of that very real struggle. So after all this, why does a book from 1928 still matter so much? Well, our final section gets right to that. Let's talk about the enduring question and the real legacy of the androgynous mind. Because when it comes right down to it, for Woolf, the androgynous mind wasn't just a social ideal, it was the engine of creativity. She truly believed that a mind that was only purely masculine or purely feminine was basically sterile. She argued that great art, true art, comes from that magical fusion of both sides of the human spirit. And this is the final triumphant payoff in the book. Orlando spends literally centuries working on one single poem, but it's only at the very end of the story, after living as a man and as a woman, and finally integrating both parts of their soul, that their art is finally complete. And it's a massive success. Which brings us right back to the beginning and leaves us with this. Virginia Woolf's incredible experiment shows us that it's society, not just biology, that writes the rules of gender. Orlando's 400-year journey is a battle against those rules. So the question Woolf's work is still asking us, almost 100 years later, is a really simple one. If that's true, who gets to write the rules now?